Hi, everybody. Welcome to English Digest. I'm Stephanie.
I'm Tom.
Hey, it's our animal unit, and today we're going to look at a very tiny kind of animal, you could say. It's an insect. It's the bee that gives us honey, and at the same time gets us scared that we're going to get stung by its little stinger on its body, which doesn't feel good.
Yeah, so we've got different kinds of this type of insect. They fly around. They've got stingers. Of course, we're talking about bees today.
Yeah.
You may have heard of hornets before, and you may have heard of wasps before.
Yeah, we had wasps at my house.
They're similar creatures, but we're talking specifically about bees. And bees are important because they pollinate plants. And as you know, bee populations have been declining in recent years, so we're trying to figure out a way to save the bees so that they can keep pollinating our plants and we can keep on eating and everybody doesn't have to starve to death. So that's what today's program is all about, and we've got World Bee Day, and this particular celebration, I guess, this day of recognition, tries to raise awareness of the importance of bees so we all realize how important they are and what we can do to help them out. So let's get to it. Let's read the entire contents of our lesson right now.
Bees do a very important job for the world, but many bee species are endangered. That's why on May 20th, we celebrate World Bee Day. It started in 2014 when the Slovenian Beekeepers Association launched a campaign to make the public aware of the need to protect bees. May 20th was chosen as it's the birth date of Anton Jasa, a Slovenian who pioneered modern beekeeping techniques. The day was made official by the United Nations in 2017. Bees are pollinators, meaning that they help fertilize other plants. 35% of the world's crops depend on bees to grow. Some of these crops are key sources of nutrients. As the bee populations decline, the risk of global malnutrition intensifies. There are several reasons why many bee species are endangered. One is the widespread use of pesticides, especially neonicotinoids. Another is the loss of habitat. Bees depend on weeds and flowers for food, but these disappear when areas are transformed into cities. Another reason is climate change. The warmer weather means that plants' growing schedules are different. This results in bees passing the winter in their hives and emerging to find that the flowers they depend on to survive have already bloomed and died. If you want to help bees, what you can do is follow these suggestions. First, if you have a yard or balcony, use it to create a safe, pesticide-free space for bees and let plants and flowers occupy it. Also, urge corporations to stop making and using neonicotinoids. If people work together, perhaps we can see our bee populations thrive once again.
Okay, let's get to it. Let's discuss the contents of today's lesson. We're talking about World Bee Day. A bee, of course, is an insect that flies around and it pollinates flowers, and they build hives and make honey and things like that. And, of course, they pollinate plants so that they can grow and so that we can have food. And because they're so important, we're going to have World Bee Day, which raises awareness of the importance of bees. It's trying to tell us how important bees are.
That's right. So what do they do for us? Well, they have a very important job. Tom mentioned that. They help pollinate plants that we need to provide food for us, or the different things that we enjoy in this world, flowers as well. So May 20th has now been declared World Bee Day. There's always, a celebration for something. On every day of the calendar year, it seems, we're celebrating something. So now we've got World Bee Day. But these little tiny insects that scare some people and amuse others, they're kind of cute if they stay away from you. They're very important to our food supply in particular.
They certainly are. So they do a very important job for the world. And we've got different species of bees. There are different kinds of bees. And of course, we celebrate World Bee Day on May 20th. It started way back in 2014 when the Slovenian Beekeepers Association launched a campaign to make the public aware of the need to protect bees. So we have this organization in Slovenia, which is a country in Eastern Europe, and they have this Beekeepers Association. Somebody who raises bees is called a beekeeper. They've got lots of bees, and they keep the bees there, and they produce honey, and they sell the honey and things like that. And so, of course, we've got the SBA, or the Slovenian Beekeepers Association, and they launched this campaign. If you launch something, you start it moving, you set it in motion, basically. You can launch a rocket, for example. You can launch an advertising campaign. You can launch a survey, etc. In this particular case, they launched a campaign. And that campaign, or this series of activities, is designed to make people aware of how important bees are and how we should protect them, the need to protect them.
That's right. So you can launch different things, as Tom said. You can launch an election campaign. Maybe you want to run for mayor or for president. Here they're launching kind of an ad campaign or a social policy campaign to try to boost the public's awareness of our need to actually protect these bees. So May 20th, why did they pick May 20th? Our writer tells us that it was chosen because it's actually the birth date of a fellow named Anton Jansa. He's a Slovenian, and it was Anton who pioneered modern beekeeping techniques. This reminds me of my dad. I wish he were still around. I would call him. He took care of beehives when he was in college to make some extra money. And I thought, oh my gosh, they scare me to death. But my dad just said, you know, you get used to it. He got bit a couple times or stung a couple times, but it wasn't a big deal. But you have to just calm down. But he quite enjoyed honey and was always trying to get us to eat honey rather than sugar. Anyway, this guy, Anton, was from Eastern Europe. He's Slovenian. And he pioneered something. If you pioneer something, it means you're one of the first people to do something. Maybe you're pioneering a new type of operation or surgery for other doctors to follow you. Or maybe you are a pioneer. We're using that as a noun form. And you do something that's never been done before. If you're a pioneer in space, you're probably one of the first people who went into outer space as an astronaut. This guy came up with new beekeeping techniques. That's what we call people who take care of bees and their hives and they harvest the honey. They're called beekeepers.
Right, so they have different ways of taking care of bees. And they suggested this day be recognized as a way to commemorate this particular fella.
Yeah.
And also to let the public know about bees. And the United Nations thought, yeah, that is important. We like Slovenians. We like this idea. So the day was made official by the UN in 2017. And so everybody around the world should know about Bee Awareness Day, which occurs again on May 20th. Now, here in the next paragraph it says, bees are pollinators, meaning that they help fertilize other plants. So that's the key word here, pollinator. That's an insect, usually a bee, that carries pollen from one plant to another, so it can be fertilized, and therefore it can grow. Pollen is that powder that comes from plants or flowers, and they pick up the pollen and they take it to other plants, and they fertilize those other plants. So remember, the substance is pollen, and the bee is a pollinator.
I was just realizing I'm growing some plants on my balcony, but there are no bees that can come in because I have screens in front of the windows. My balcony is enclosed. It's not out there right in the open. So I'm wondering if I'm ever going to get anything on my plants because the bees can't pollinate them. We have a mutual friend, Tom and I have a friend, who does a lot of gardening on her balcony, and she has actually said to me that the bees have helped produce a lot more fruit on some of her plants than she had before. But yeah, you have to let the bees in. That's the problem. And I don't want the bees to come in to my apartment. If they get into my balcony, they can probably get into my apartment. So we need them, though, because they fertilize other plants by moving pollen from one thing to another. 35% of the world's crops depend on bees to grow. That's a lot of food we're talking about, you guys.
Certainly, and of course, different kinds of fruits depend on pollinators, and they depend on pollen to grow. I remember many years ago, a neighbor in my neighborhood showed me how to pollinate dragon fruit by using a Q-tip or something, a cotton swab.
Sometimes you have to help them.
Yeah, exactly. So they didn't need the bees to do that, but still, if you want to grow food, we've got thousands of plants, and we can't do it ourselves. We need the bees to help us out. So yeah, 35% of the world's crops depend on bees to grow.
We're using this term crop or crops. A type of crop is just a plant that someone cultivates, that someone grows. It could be in a pot or container outside on your balcony. Or maybe you're a farmer and you have a big field of crops that you're growing. But a crop is something that you cultivate as a type of food, especially if it's maybe a type of grain or vegetable or even a type of fruit. So those crops really depend on bees to help pollinate them. Some of these crops are key sources of nutrients. Nutrients are the things that help keep our bodies healthy, that we need in order to remain in good health and alive.
Yeah, we got vitamins and minerals that we need. We got iron and magnesium and stuff like that. And as the bee populations decline, as there are fewer and fewer bees, well, then, as a result, the risk of global malnutrition intensifies. Malnutrition means you're not getting enough nutrition, and you could get sick or even die without adequate nutrition. And if something intensifies, it gets more intense, or it gets stronger and less easy to deal with. It gets more difficult to deal with. So yes, indeed, there'll be more and more poor people around the world getting sick because of malnutrition.
Now, the opposite of intensify would be weaken. Something gets less and less strong. But to intensify, something grows stronger and stronger. I wanted to mention malnutrition. Look at the 3 letters at the beginning of that word. Mal means bad in French. So just remember, when you see mal, it's not a good thing. Malnutrition, bad nutrition, or not enough nutrition. Right now, we're going to listen to our Chinese teacher speak for a while, and then we'll be back.
听众朋友大家好，我是安娜。我们今天还要来看一篇课漏字哦。那这篇课漏字主要谈的是蜜蜂。那蜜蜂怎么啦？蜜蜂其实为我们这个世界做很重要的贡献呢。但是有很多的蜜蜂都已经面临绝种了。好，我们等一下会谈谈为什么蜜蜂会绝种。不过啊，就是因为蜜蜂濒临绝种，而且很多的这个 species 都面临绝种，所以我们都会有所谓的某一个庆祝节日。我们在5月20号就会庆祝世界蜜蜂日哦。那这世界蜜蜂日是怎么样开始的呢？在第一段的第3句，我们提到这世界蜜蜂日其实是开始于2014年，当时有一个 Slovenian 的一个养蜂人协会 Beekeepers Association， 他们发动了一个什么呢？好 ，launch 这个字 Launch 在高中英文也很常见，其实它就是 start 开始了，发起了，发动战争，发起活动，都用这个动词。那后面我们到底第一题的选项是什么呢？如果我们第一格后面是使得大众可以了解到保护蜜蜂的需求跟重要性的话，那当然是发起这样子的一个活动，去引起大家的意识，是一种宣传性的活动。所以第一格选 C 是比较符合文意的。那为什么要选择5月20日呢？其实是因为啊，这就是某一个人，这个人很重要，这个 Slovenian 啊 Anton Jansa 这位先生啊，这是他的生日哦，他开创了现代养蜂的技术。我们同样在第一段的地方也要注意第4句。首先第一个重点就是这里的 as as 当连接词的时候就3个意思，第一 when， 第二 because， 3如同好像。在文章当中，我们从 as 前後去判断，後面加的就是原因。而这个原因呢，我们介绍到了 Anton Jansa， 逗点之后有一个同位语 a Slovenian， 他是一个斯洛维尼亚人，而 who 到句尾又来限定他，要仔细说明一下，他就是那一个开创现代养蜂技术的人。甚至联合国在2017年还正式宣布这一天就是世界蜜蜂日呢。当然我们接下来的第二段就会提到蜜蜂它为什么很重要，因为其实蜜蜂啊，它是授粉者，也就是说呢，授粉者的意思是帮助其他的植物授粉，这样子植物就可以继续繁衍下去。接下来就来到很重要的第二题哦，感觉上是个文法题，但其实第二题这里啊，逗点之后的这里的which，它其实是一个非限定用法补充说明的关系子句。比较特别的是which 它代替的是逗点前面这3个字，这整句话蜜蜂就是授粉者的这一件事情，它的意思就是，也就是说 which means， 我们看到的是 which 省略掉了 means 变成动词 ing 关系子句的简化，所以第二题答案要选 A。 不过随着蜜蜂的数量减少，全球营养不良的风险就因此而加剧了。
We're going to take a quick break. Stay tuned. We'll be right back.
Okay, everybody, let's continue talking about bees. I suppose this isn't the most pleasant subject for most people because we're scared of bees. Oh, there's a bee! Get it away from me. It might sting me. But of course, I think most of us realize that bees are important because they pollinate plants, so we need to help them out. And so that's why we have this day to recognize the contribution that bees make to the world food supply. We've got World Bee Day, and it came from Slovenia. It started 2014, and then it was recognized by the UN in 2017. We also talked about the fact that 35% of the world's crops need those bees to grow. And of course, these plants provide nutrients for people, and if the bee populations go down, then more and more people will suffer malnutrition. Now, here in the third paragraph, it says, there are several reasons why many bee species are endangered. If you're an endangered, of course, an endangered species, that means your numbers are going down, and you may become critically endangered, and eventually you might go extinct.
Meaning you no longer exist on this planet. So we don't want that to happen. That's for sure. So there are several reasons why bee species are endangered. Here's the first one. We've got a widespread use of pesticides happening around the planet. So if you're a farmer, especially if you're a farmer and you have a lot of crops you're growing, you want to protect them from weeds and pests, bugs that come in and eat your crops and just destroy them so that you can't sell them on the market. So they often use these pesticides to try to protect against weeds and pests, other little insects that are not good. So if you talk about pesticides, you're usually talking about a type of chemical. Chemicals can be very harmful to humans as well. So we try to stay away from as much as we can from pesticides. I know there's a big push nowadays to have organic fruits and vegetables grown so that you can avoid all these nasty chemicals that are in pesticides.
Right, and we've got a type of pesticide here, or a family of pesticides called neonicotinoids. I'm not a scientist. I'm not quite sure exactly what that is, but I do know that the word nicotine is in there. Nicotine, of course, is in cigarettes, and people crave nicotine, so they are related, I suppose, although I don't think they're using cigarettes to fertilize plants. That would be silly. And another is the loss of habitat. That, of course, is another reason reason why bees are endangered, or at least certain species are endangered. And, of course, habitat is where they live, and that probably has to do with the deforestation and the reduction in plants and things like that. Maybe climate change is involved in that. So, yes, there's a loss of habitat, and the bees just don't have enough places to live, and therefore their populations go down.
Right. So, because they depend on these things to survive, they're disappearing when these other things disappear along with them. So, we need to make sure we have enough food or plants for these bees to even survive. The problem is some of these areas that they've been used to living in, their habitats, right? They're being transformed into cities. More and more people live in cities these days. We used to have most of the people on Earth living out in the countryside. Not everybody was in the city so much. To transform is one of our vocabulary words, and it means to make a complete change in how you look, maybe in your form or appearance or your character. Some people transform when they start a career in entertainment, in acting or in some sort of a dramatic field like that. Maybe they start out looking kind of okay, but once they become famous, wow, they really transform their looks into almost perfection. A lot of them go through plastic surgery, of course, to get that way. So transform means to make a complete change.
Right, and of course this is a verb phrase, to transform into something, just like the Transformers robots. They transform from cars into robots, or vehicles. They transform into robots when they were vehicles before, trucks, cars, or whatever. Another reason for their decline is climate change. As I mentioned before, the warmer weather means that plants' growing schedules are different. They start blooming or blossoming at different times of the year, and this results in bees passing the winter in their hives and emerging to find that the flowers they depend on to survive have already bloomed and died. So, of course, like bears, bees hibernate during the winter in their hives. That's where a bee lives, in a hive. And therefore, when the spring arrives, they come out, but they look for flowers and they go, where are the flowers? Where have all the flowers gone? And of course, the flowers have all died. Well, the flowers, I guess the plants are still alive, but the flowers have already blossomed, they've already bloomed, and therefore there's nothing to get pollen from.
Yeah, I wanted to mention we often will call them beehives, just so you're aware of that, not just a hive, a beehive. But yeah, like Tom said, sometimes they emerge from the hives, those beehives, and they see that the flowers they wanted to go over and pollinate have already bloomed and died. Their time is gone. So what do you do if you want to help bees? Well, our author here has some suggestions for you. If you have a suggestion for somebody, you have some sort of idea for them, based on your own experience. Maybe you've been through a similar situation that it looks like they're going to be experiencing, and you just want to give them some tips, some suggestions. Here are some suggestions for you if you want to help these bees. First, if you have a yard, if you're lucky enough to have a yard, wow, that would be nice. Or a balcony. Most people in Taiwan have a balcony. You can use it to create a safe pesticide-free space for bees, and then let plants and flowers occupy it. You have to get some plants and flowers out there on your balcony. Some people are just using their balcony to do laundry, but you can put a couple of pots out there and have some flowers and plants, and that would encourage bees to come over.
Right, and you might want to do some research in terms of what kinds of plants you can put out there, ones that are bee-friendly. And so create that space, don't use pesticides, and let those plants grow and let the flowers grow. Also, urge corporations to stop making and using neonicotinoids. Yeah, so call up your pesticide company and say, hey, you guys, you're using those neonicotinoids. Stop it. They're killing all the bees. I don't know if anybody's going to do that, but you could actually maybe write to your congressperson or something like that, write to your representative. Maybe they can do something about that. And if people work together, perhaps we can see our bee populations thrive once again. Now, here, of course, we've got the word thrive, which is a verb. that just means to do very well in large numbers. And you could talk about a person thriving in a certain environment. I could say maybe Joe grew up in a small town, but he wasn't very successful. But when he moved to the city, he thrived. He had lots of business opportunities. He met lots of people, and he became very successful.
I wanted to mention our other vocabulary word here, corporation. A corporation's a company or a group of people that work together as a single entity, you could say. So corporations, big corporations out there, we know their names. You can write them, email them, call them. I find that it doesn't do much good. But we can always try, get your friends and relatives together, let them know that this is an important issue, and make your voice heard.
Yeah, indeed. We, of course, know that bees can sting us, but you must admit they are cute little devils, and we should try hard to save them. Okay, that brings us to the end of our explanation for today. Let's listen now to our Chinese teacher.
再来的第3段呢，我们就提到啦，为什么这么多蜜蜂啊会濒临绝种呢？其实有好几个原因。第一个原因就是一种农药，这种农药呢是新烟碱类农药，它出现在第3段第2句的地方。好，这个新烟碱类农药第2句最后一个字有没有看到 neonicotinoid 新烟碱类农药？不过在说明这个农药之前，我们先看一下其中一个原因。第2句第一个字 one， 另外一个原因第3句字首的 another 我们也把它抓出来。那还有没有别的原因呢？其实还有另外一个原因，我们在第3段第5句有没有字首又看到 another， 甚至我们在列举到第3的时候往往会有强调哦，所以第5句常常有时候会出现第3个原因叫做 still another， 另外还有一个原因。那到底有几个原因呢？其实还没有数完，但是如果真的数完的最后一个一定会有定冠词 the， 所以就会说 the other 是剩下唯一一个。好，现在回过头来说明新烟碱类农药到底为什么会造成这个蜜蜂的灭绝，因为这种农药它会让昆虫瘫痪死亡，它影响大脑功能，也就是说工蜂出门工作结果找不到路回家，母蜂跟小蜂全部死光光，这是第一个原因。那第2个原因在第3句呢，就是我们第3题，我们看后面第4句的地方本来都是有一些花草的地方，现在已经变成 cities 城市嘞。言下之意就是蜜蜂没有地方住，它住的地方第3格答案选 B habitat， 所以 the loss of habitat 没有地方住，这是第2个原因。那第3个原因 still another 我们说第5句就是气候变迁啦。气候变迁是什么意思？就是变暖。变暖的意思就是蜜蜂本来过了冬天出来发现花开花谢，它们的食物早就不见，那这个时候蜜蜂不就是会死光光吗？所以就是另外一个原因。好，不过呢接下来我们在第3段第7句这个地方，这个第4题为什么要用 result in 呢？因为后面就是结果，我们刚刚说了这个气候变暖，花开花谢，然后死光光，这就是一个结果，所以第4题根据上下文我们选了这个文意的 results in。 当然我们要特别提醒大家，第4格因为它已经是一个介系词片语，所以后面我们可以把 passing the winter and emerging 就是后来出现要来找花的时候呢，都用动词 ing， 就是因为受到前面第4题 results in 的影响。好，最后面我们就来看一下第4段啦。如果我们真的要帮助这些蜜蜂，我们可以怎么做呢？当然我们可以增加一下它们可以存活的地方嘛，然后不要用这些农药嘛，从这个原因下手。好，所以第5题我们看到，如果我们可以找一个 safe 安全的 pesticide free 没有农药的这些地方呢，那这样子所有的蜜蜂就可以过来。这个动作第5格其实就是 occupy， 就是占满这样子的一个概念。那希望大家也能够贡献自己的力量。以上是我们今天的内容，我是安娜，我们下次见。
That's it for today, everybody. Thank you for joining us. And the next time you have honey on your toast or something, think of those hard-working bees that produced it. From all of us here at English Digest, my name is Tom.
I'm Stephanie.
Goodbye.
Bye.